back here. Today, I thought that I will talk about extraordinary dreams, and I decided I'm not going to be too heady about it. If you really want to know a lot about extraordinary dreams, I'll give you some reference at the end that you can look it up. The reason I decided to choose extraordinary dreams to talk about, because we live in an extraordinary time. In the 70s and 80s and even 90s, everybody wanted to have big dreams. They wanted to have lucid dreams. They wanted to work with their dreams, and they still do. And I've been in this field for 35 years, and I've been teaching for a long time. But I feel very strongly about what is happening today in our world. So I'm trying to bring the dreaming here. But nevertheless, I will share with you about the dreaming world first. There are many types of dreams. And when people say, oh, I had this dream or that dream, or they give theory about dreams in general, I sometimes wonder, because there's so many categories inside of the dream world. And the beauty of this is that this is not something I hold or somebody else holds, an expert holds. We all dream. So in some ways, we are all experts. Is that how do we get inside of that inner world and really get inside of it and look into it and see our own inner worlds? So I thought to share with you varieties of extraordinary dreams. What is the difference between extraordinary and ordinary? Is that ordinary dreams, we call them day residue dreams. These are dreams in which you've had an event happen the day before and then you have a dream about it. Or as mundane dreams. Extraordinary dreams are a little bit different. And I chose a few to just share with you. So when you think of it, you probably all have had some of it. In our book, Extraordinary Dreams, we categorize about 15 different kinds of extraordinary dreams. And there are multiple more than that, but healing dreams are one of them. These are dreams in which you have a dream of getting healed in a dream and actually happens. Or dreams in which you get diagnosed in a dream and then actually the diagnoses are happening. And this goes way back into the ancient time when they had dream temples. People would go and incubate dreams, people who were ill, to get healing from their dreams. Initiation dreams. You see initiation dreams in indigenous culture quite a bit. They get initiated in the dream to walk a certain path, like shamanic path, as often they ask, the great shaman asks, did you have a big dream? So the initiation dream also is another big dream. Spiritual dreams. My first academic research was on spiritual experiences in lucid dreaming. This was in the 80s. And it's online if you wanted to look at it. It's called Experiencing the Divine in Lucid Dream State, if you wanted to look into it. But the spiritual dreams are dreams in which the individual feels that that particular dream brought this opening, the awe, the unity. And it could be seeing a divine in a personal form or impersonal form, or it could be a triangle, or it could be a geometric shape. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what that individual feels when they had that dream. Because we can't say, well, if you had a dream about a certain kind of divinity, so that is a spiritual dream. That is, I think, is using a little bit of prejudice about it, but it's all about what you experience. And also that, I have to just put a little footnote here. Sometimes people like to interpret people's dreams. Well, if I have a certain dream and exactly the same dream you have, they would have a different meaning because your background is different, your historicity is different, your experiences in life is different. So we have to really look to see what it is for us, what it means for us. Creative dreams, that's the one that I use quite a bit, and a lot of artists use it for getting inspiration from dreams. But the fact that we dream, in fact, my last book, Integral Dreaming, I started the whole book with a sentence that dreaming is the art of the mind. The fact that we dream, we are creative people, because when you look at your dreams, what you've created, this collage of different events that you put together and then becomes a dream. But a lot of people get inspiration from their dreams, and they're extraordinary, some of them. Lucid dream, dreams in which in the dream we know we are dreaming. That's a whole category of extraordinary dreams. I will go into it a little bit because that's my field. I've been in it for a very long time and do my research on it. Out-of-body dreams. The reason I brought all of these different categories is that I get questions a lot from people. Is out-of-body, have you ever had the experience of out-of-body? Well, yes, there is a category of out-of-body experience. So some people mix lucid dream with out-of-body experience. You could have an out-of-body experience in which you can be lucid, but you can have a lucid dream that is not an out-of-body experience, because out-of-body experience is a particular state of consciousness, and that has its own category. For instance, people who have out-of-body experience, they can see themselves, their sort of ether body, come out of their body in a different way. Either they roll or they come up, and then they can be lucid. But then you can be lucid in a dream and not remember where your body is sleeping. So it's a different distinction. So the only system I've seen that they do dissecting like that is Tibetan Buddhism. They just go into really detail of finding, okay, this is different than this. We should not clump them all together. I remember one of my Tibetan teacher, Lama Tarchen Rinpoche, he wanted to be here, he needed to be spoken about. He once gave a lecture about that in Tibetan Buddhism we have 64,000 emotions. And after his talk, I went to him and said, you know, us psychologists, we thought that we have only this much. He says, no, there's not just anger. There's a whole body of anger that you have to really dissect it. And it's quite fascinating when you get into it. Now, dream within dreams are in which that you have a dream, and then suddenly another dream opens up inside of that dream. Sometimes you remember inside of a dream that you had that dream, and there it is again. And sometimes, I didn't have that in here, but it's good to mention it, there's what we call it false awakening. When in the dream you think you're awakened, but you're still dreaming. You know, you've had this big epic dream and say, oh, that's fantastic, I will remember it in the morning, and you're writing it in your journal, and then in the morning you wake up and there's nothing in there. You fall into another dream. That's called false awakening. Collective or mutual dreaming, that's a really wonderful, I used to have my students do that, and it's possible. When two people, often it happens between couple or family members or very close friends, when at the same night they have the same dream in which they see each other in that dream. Now, we have a lucid mutual dream, which is very rare, but two people become lucid at the same time in their dream, but it exists. Telepathic dreams, when an event happens at the same time you have a dream about it. Say you're asleep and then somebody is doing something next door and you actually have a dream about it. That's telepathic. At the same time it happens. Precognitive dreams are dreams in which you have the dream, but then it happens in future. It can happen in a few hours, it can happen in a few days, it can happen in a few months, it could happen a few years. I explain déjà vu feeling as a dream, a precognitive dream that we forgot. Now, we forget a lot of our dreams. And since we're talking about that, dreams are an occasion of experience. We all experience it, but we might not remember it. But it has left a trace in us because we've experienced it. Somewhere it's in us, and then suddenly we see a synchronicity happens, or we see we feel like a déjà vu. I've been here before. I've talked to this person before. We are actually pretty precognitive dreamers, but we don't know it. We're finding out because we don't know much about our mind and brain, and we don't really know much to see how much we are capable of. Visitation dreams are quite interesting. It happens often when people die in our life. And within 3 days or 7 days, then you have a dream, and it really feels real. And in Tibetan Buddhism, they call them true dreams. The dreams that you really feel the person is there. And that's what we call it a visitation dream. Now, if you ask a shaman what that means, they give you one answer. If you ask a scientist, they would give you a different answer. If you ask a psychotherapist, so it's multi-epistemology. There are different ways of knowing and different answers to each of these questions. So there's no one answer. Just like when we fall asleep, in the shamanic tradition, said, well, your spirit is leaving your body and you're going somewhere else. But you ask the scientists that, they think that you're crazy. So it's just, it depends on which avenue we go. So I chose a few areas in which that's been my interest for the past decades. And I work on these areas of a different variety of extraordinary dreams. One of them is hypnagogia. Hypnagogia is the few actually seconds when you're falling asleep. That very few seconds is called hypnagogia. It comes from two words, hypnos and agogia. Hypnos, god of sleep, and agogia, leading to sleep. Hypnagogia is actually a very interesting state of consciousness because it feels like the whole of your inner world opens up and then it closes. And if you're lucid in it, you can capture it. In fact, in my lucid dream classes, I teach hypnagogia first, to how to be lucid and go to sleep lucidly. And then there is the hypnagogic lucidity, is the practice in which you witness your mind, just like most of you in this room are meditators. How do you meditate? You sit, you observe your thoughts, it comes and goes. In hypnagogia, the same technique. You just observe, witness what arises in dreams, and just observe. And that's the first step of becoming lucid in it. And then there's a whole other way of either interacting or working through it with creativity. Then there's the hypnopompia. We love all this terminology, but it's just that when it's what I said initially, we can't just say dreams. There's all these different categories. Then there's the hypnopompia. Hypnopompia is when we are just waking up in the morning. That state is known as hypnopompia. We're being pumped out of sleep. Hypnagogia, phenomenologically, is different than hypnopompia. One of them is we are going from waking consciousness into dreaming. The other one is going from dreaming to waking. So it's very different. But in hypnopompia, it's when we can actually access our dreaming mind, because at the end of the sleep, we are in rapid eye movement for 45 minutes, and we can just go back into the dreaming and just sort of bring in some of our dreaming from that. So hypnagogic lucidity, hypnopompic lucidity is when you, in the morning, you wake up, you recognize that you're just coming out of a sleep, and then lucidly re-enter back into dreaming. Then I wanted to mention that there exists a phenomenon of light inside any experiences, either lucid or non-lucid, but my experience and my research shows that when you are inside a phenomenon of inner light, it's hard not to be lucid because it's very intense. And there are varieties of experiences with inner light. It's not just, often people say, I saw light through the tunnel and then I got close. That is actually near-death experience literature. And then people get excited. But there is a whole, there are not that many researchers go into that, but there's a whole host of experiences when one is inside the experience of inner light, from seeing the light outside, seeing the light as a disk of light, seeing the light as just light, undifferentiated, then going through the light and what is inside the light, what happens there. And there is a whole variety of inner light. The same with phenomena of void. In some ways, people talk about this the same, but when you're experiencing the void, being inside that place of some people call it emptiness or blackness or the dark matter or that space, that has its own experiences. And once we get into these level of experience within dreaming, it has a bit of an archetypal connection. So it's not like as my experience is different than your experience. You sit down and tell me your experience. I tell you my experience. We recognize it. So at some deep level, and Carl Jung talked about collective unconscious. At one point, when we go deep, 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 we are connected. So, and we recognize each other. We basically give each other confirmation. It's not so personal anymore. Hyperspace lucidity is something that I've been researching for a very long time. The reason I used that word 30 years ago is because I didn't want to use a psychological or a spiritual word, because any psychological word I would use, any spiritual word I would use, it was laden with meaning and presupposition. So I went and I like to go into, say, physics or mathematics, go somewhere else to bring in a word and then define it. So hyperspace lucidity is when you're in a lucid dream, and then my research was about when you're in a lucid dream, you ask for to be experiencing or to be in presence of the divine, the highest. And it was so incredible, though this research was done 31 years ago, it still is relevant forever, because it's about being in front of or being in contact with the bigger aspect of who we are. And that research has been leading me like a horse for all these years. So I'm doing a variety of other parts of it. So I call it hyperspace lucidity. So what happens in these kind of experiences? The reason I'm getting into this is because we are getting into the non-duality. First, in these experiences, the dream narrative morphs into more of a non-differential and unrecognizable images. The dreaming body has to transform. The dreaming body cannot go from one state of consciousness to another state of consciousness. Say, in a dream, I might see myself at this body, Fariba, but if I'm going into a different dimension, this has to transform somehow. And the dreaming self has to transform. Now, it depends on the level of the practitioner, whether that practitioner can transform without being afraid of going into. Because in that space, often people get afraid, they come back, and then there's a whole series of practices that needs to happen to not be. And there is a phenomena of a speed in that place where we've noticed that when we are in that space of consciousness going from one dimension to another, suddenly something accelerates. You feel like you're going very fast, and things just goes very, very fast, and one enters in another dimension. Then there is a transition from known to the unknown. Anything that we had the presupposition, it just disappears. And then we enter into another space. And if we can sustain it, then that would become really amazing. This is another term that I coined when I was looking at how we can really trust being in a not knowing. So to know that within not knowing, there is a knowing. So epistemic is coming epistemic from epistemology. Uncertainty comes actually from Asian philosophy in the Taoism, from Chuang Tzu and other Taoist master. Bringing the two together is that to sustain not knowing. And often we want to know. So that brings us back to waking when we are in a dream. And then entering into unity consciousness, which you've heard many speakers talk about that here. Now, the transformation, for me, the word sustaining is very important because I'm also a practitioner. Is sustaining that space. That is the difficult part. That's where the practice comes. Can we sustain inner light? Can we sustain void? That's that comes with the practice. And here are some of what I wanted to share with you. The first one for me is sincerity. Sincerity, I worked, for many years, when I was a student, I worked with a wonderful master, Pilu, no, not Pilu Fei is my Tai Chi master, is Yi Wu. He wrote his whole entire dissertation on sincerity. Can you imagine writing a whole entire dissertation on one word? And then he unpacked this sincerity is unbelievable. And then within the Tibetan Buddhism, these two words, pure intention and motivation, is very important when you started to study dream yoga. They say pure motivation. They might not teach you anything, but they just tell you pure motivation, pure intention. So that is very important to practice that before getting into those spaces from the point of view in the dream world. Witnessing is very important. Meditation is a very important skill to sustain. Emotional balance, working with emotional balance is very important. And then psychological balance, that is very important. There are many people who just want to go into transcendent without having what would I call a grounding. And then they just come back, or they want to get into Kundalini opening without the major grounding. And that grounding is the emotional balancing, psychological balancing, grounding. In all of my classes, I teach people how to ground. That's very important. They just, if you want to have 1 foot here and 1 foot there, you have to have a ground, not 2 foot there. Because we have to come back in this state of consciousness, no? When we have had these practices and we're sort of confronted in that state of consciousness, a lot of transformation happens. And that happens from the moment you wake up in hypnopompia. You feel like the whole cells of your body has changed. You're no longer the same person. And there is a need for manifestation of that. You cannot ignore it from that experience. And personal action is often very important. People say, well, the dreamers are dreamers. But no, they're dreamers just like artists. They're very practical people. They like to create. They like to work. They like to get it out. And for me, it's very important that whatever one learns personally, one brings it to the community. That element is very important. And then the other element is social change. Many want to do this personal transcendent, but there's an element of social change. How do you bring that personal transcendent to society? That's very important. And then global concern. At the same time that one does spiritual practice, we have to really be awake about what is happening around us and how can we contribute. And if I have done this dream work and these works, how can I bring it to people? So I'm going to end with these my own learnings throughout. That we are dreaming awake in some ways. This is just a big dream. This is a dream. This is a big dream. And in lucid dream, usually people like to have lucid dream because they have choice to change things. But that choice can be here. And I think that that's the most important time at this point in time, that we would be awake here. We can connect to past, present, and future when we are in that state of consciousness. Lucid dreaming practice is about lucid waking. All of the practices brings you back to lucid waking. So we are in a big dream, being dreamed awake. And we have the choice of changing the world with our dreaming. And it is time for us to dream a big dream. And each individual can have a big dream. And that's the beauty of it. It's not just that person is going to have a big dream. Each one of us can have a big dream. And it is time to manifest that dream. So whatever dream that you have, whatever dream creation you want to do, this is the time. This is the time to do it. If you can't do that, then support other people who are doing these big dreams. Just be the support of that. That's very, very important. So we are here to be awakened. And we are here to be lucid. I will end with saying, dreaming the world anew. That's my message. If I have to give, that would be it. Dreaming the world anew. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.